Welcome to Round Glass. Thanks for joining me in this session on 6 attitudes for inner peace. I'm Sarah Blackburn. In this session, we are going to be discussing an attitude of patience. And often when we think of patience, the idea of maybe waiting for something or some connection to time is generally what we think of first. However, what I'd like us to explore in this session is another aspect of patience, which has to do with how we respond when we are provoked. Specifically, when we have a feeling of anger arise, and how we could respond with patience to that emotion. And what we'll do is look at why that might be of benefit, how it could help us have an inner state that's peaceful. And we'll talk about what we can do to practice it. But before we dive in, I would love to hear from you. So my question for you is, what situations are the hardest for you to be patient in? If you don't mind and can share that in the chat, I would love to know. And while you're doing that, I'll share with you quickly what the plan is for this session. This is the third of 6 sessions where we're looking at specific attitudes that we can cultivate that will have an impact on our state of happiness and our overall state of peace. And in this session, like I said, we'll be looking specifically at patience from the perspective of a long line of meditators, and specifically why patience in the form of applying patience to our anger would be of benefit to our mind and our sense of happiness. And then in the meditation itself, we'll begin to practice that attitude so that we can integrate it into our lives and really see the effects. But before we dive in, as usual, I would love to hear what you shared about those moments when it's the hardest to maintain patience. And so I see we have someone who shared, I find it hardest to be patient when dealing with bureaucracy. I get so frustrated. I completely understand. I identify with that. So thanks for sharing that. You are not alone, my friend. That's a great one. And another one, I find it difficult to be patient when I'm feeling overwhelmed. Yes, I also identify with that. And I think a lot of people can share that feeling. So thanks for sharing that. And then we have someone else who shared in the chat and said, I am a super patient person, but when my daughter is pushing my boundaries or using a really sassy tone, it's difficult to stay patient. You're all being so honest and clear, and thank you for sharing that. I identify so well with what you're saying. And what we'll look at in this session are specifically those moments when we are provoked and why this attitude of patience. So let's dive in. I'd like us to think about patience in that other form we were discussing, which is patience being a response when anger arises. And why the meditators would say that anger can disturb our state of mind, and that generally 95% of the time, anger isn't helpful for us. And I'd like to explain that in 2 different ways, or the ways that they highlight that anger disturbs our inner peace. The first one is that when we get angry, oftentimes we're putting the power of our emotions in someone else's hands. there is often a connotation when we're angry that it's someone else's fault that we're upset or we feel bad or we've been hurt. And although they may have had something to do with it, ultimately, our inner experience is up to us. And when we are in the throes of our anger, it can be hard to recognize our ability to manage our own response and our own inner world. And then the other thing that tends to be a problem with anger is that it simply disturbs our happiness. When we're angry, it's impossible to be happy. And so that's the big reason why the meditators have said that whatever we can do to counter anger or use it in a different way will improve our mental state, bring us more happiness and peace. One thing I want to quickly clarify is that with this understanding and application of patience, it does not mean that we don't take action, that we aren't allowed to respond when there's a problem or when we're upset or hurt by something. That's not what they're saying. They are, in fact, inviting us to respond, but with a different motivation. And I'd like to finish with, how do we put that in practice? There happens to be a famous quote in the Buddhist lineage and the meditation techniques that I'm sharing. The quote goes, "If you can do something about it, why get angry? And if you can't do something about it, why get angry?" And that'll be the phrase we'll carry into our meditation and look for how we can apply that in our life to hold a more patient state of mind and counter the disturbance that often comes with anger. So let's begin. Find a comfortable position. A lot of times that means having a nice straight spine, sitting upright if you happen to be sitting, or at least keeping an alert back if you're laying down. Most important is to be comfortable. And when you're ready, you can let your eyes fall closed or start to zoom into one spot in the room that you can focus on without letting your eyes wander about. As you let your body start to settle, bring your awareness to the sensations of air moving in and out of your body. And let that awareness of your breath bring a relaxation to your body, coupled with an alertness. Let your inhale and exhale remind you of the life force that runs through you. Now begin to zoom into the area of the body where your breath is most prominent. Maybe you can identify the sensations at your abdomen or your chest, or perhaps at the tip of your nose. Wherever the breath is most prominent for you, zoom into that area and follow those sensations. And then we'll start by thinking about what happens when anger is the main motivator for anyone's actions. And so think through the ways you've seen anger play out, perhaps in your own life or what you've observed in others. And from this bird's eye view, consider what are the results of actions motivated in frustration and anger. And then bring to mind this saying, if you can do something about it, why get angry? And if you cannot do anything about it, why get angry? Take a couple moments to think through that phrase. If you can do something about it, why get angry? If there's nothing you can do about it, why get angry? As you think through this phrase, ask yourself, how does it invite us to take action? Then continuing to contemplate this phrase. How does it invite us to let go of anger? Continue to return to the phrase and think about how it encourages action and when, and how it encourages to let go of anger, and when it's appropriate to do that. A little reminder, the phrase is, if there's something we can do about it, why get angry? And if there's nothing we can do about it, why get angry? Now I'd like you to think of somewhere in your life. Maybe there is an obstacle that you find really frustrating. Or maybe you tend to get angry when something specific happens. And then think through this particular phrase and if it could be applicable to that thing that tends to spark frustration in you. And now start to think through how this phrase could have an impact on your overall state of peace. What are the benefits it could bring to your mind? And how could it increase your capacity for patience? Now we'll begin to wrap up by dedicating any insight that you may have had, either in the meditation or previously, perhaps earlier in the day or in the week. Offer that up to someone in the world who could benefit from it. In whatever way feels authentic to you, dedicate the efforts you've made in this meditation so that they're of benefit to you and others out in the world. And then bring your mind back to the present moment. Reconnect to the sounds, the sensations around you right now. Feel your body breathing. And then in your own time, begin to come out of the meditation, move your body, and open your eyes. All right. Now that we've had an opportunity to look at some of the benefits of patience and how we could apply it to our life, I hope you found some ways that you can practice it when you're off the cushion or bring it into your meditation more often. We've still got some time for any questions or comments that may have come up for you as we were discussing this topic or as we were meditating. So please put those in the chat. And I'd like to talk about some of the things that I know come up for me and other people as they think through this whole attitude of patience and applying it to those intense moments when we feel anger. I'd like to begin by, again, highlighting that anger in and of itself, just as the raw emotion, isn't the problem. Anger just by itself isn't bad or good. What the meditators are pointing us at is that when we act from anger and we haven't trained our mind or we're not sure how to channel the strength of that emotion, there tends to be, for most of us, some negative repercussions in that it can also spark in us a desire to want revenge or it encourages, at least a lot of times for me, desire to hurt back when I've been hurt, or not understand what the bigger picture might be because I'm so blinded by the strength of that emotion. And so what we're invited to do is examine the feeling of anger and be patient with ourselves and the scenario long enough that we can channel that emotion and use it to act in a positive way instead of being fueled by the negative side of anger. And so I hope that that phrase can remind us of when to take action and how we could do that, and help us to not get lost in that frustration that happens when there's nothing to be done. We could find something else, another way to respond. So with that, I wanted to share. There's also a few other questions I'm happy to talk about that often come up when we do this meditation. And that's thinking about this other tendency to maybe push our anger down or repress it. And I just want to be clear that that's also not the teaching here. It isn't about not feeling the anger. Instead, it's about how we use it and how we respond. So when the phrase says, if there's something we can do about it, why get angry? Instead of getting lost in the frustration and the blindness that happens with anger, the phrase is saying, address the problem and do something about it. And then if there's nothing to be done, that anger, that frozen frustration, desire to lash back, won't actually help anything anyway. So I just wanted to be clear that the idea isn't to feel or isn't to suppress our emotions, but instead unpack them, use them in a positive way, and help it steer our mind towards action or attitudes of inner peace and acceptance of what is. All right, so I'll leave you with a little gem from this session, which is there are things that we can cultivate within ourselves that bring about a sense of peace. And when we recognize our anger and work with it in a way where it doesn't cause harm for ourselves or others, there's a deeper sense of happiness and peace that will come about. So it's been a pleasure sharing this attitude of patience with you, and hopefully I hope that it brings you a deeper sense of inner peace. That's all we have time for in this session, but you're welcome to go to my profile page and check out the previous sessions that have to do with this topic of attitudes for inner peace. You'll see those previous sessions and also when I'll be going live again. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure meditating with you. I look forward to seeing you the next time.